Imagine the blazing sun overhead and the urgent wail of alarms cutting through a dusty courtyard on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. Elderly market vendors clutch their goods as clouds of heat haze swirl around rows of solar panels and makeshift generators humming in the background. This is not a scene of conflict, it's the birthplace of a quiet revolution. For years, brilliant young black engineers from Burkina Faso applied for visa scholarships, even internships at Google and Meta, only to be met with cold rejection. Not eligible due to nationality, the form letters read. Yet here, under that relentless heat, those same minds refuse to accept the world's no. Led by a simple question from President Ibrahim Traoré, would you like to build something bigger than Google right here at home? They forged ahead with nothing but sweat, solar power, and unshakable belief. On June 14, 2025, Burkina Faso's government unveiled PAC Digital, a $150 million plan to connect 500 remote villages, launch 2 sovereign data centers, and digitize every public service from birth certificates to land deeds without a single foreign server in sight. They call their homegrown system Tama, the technology of African memory and autonomy. Every line of code is more than technology. It is freedom carved in binary. So here's the question for you. Can a nation without Silicon Valley truly become a global tech leader? What does it mean when a country refuses to ask permission and instead writes its own future? If you believe Africa can seize its destiny through innovation, if you're ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about power and technology, join us. Like, comment, and subscribe right now to witness how Ibrahim Traoré and his team in Burkina Faso are rewriting African news one keystroke at a time. Imagine dawn breaking over a dusty Ouagadougou neighborhood where the low hum of solar generators mingles with the distant clang of market stalls coming to life. In one small compound, a 20-hectare plot on the city's edge, villagers pause as a lone pickup truck rumbles in, carrying the first team of young engineers. Their arrival signals the start of something extraordinary, a national tech movement born from rejection and fueled by determination. Ousmane, once among Burkina Faso's brightest computer science graduates, had watched his dreams flicker and die in a stack of cold form letters. Perfect grades, a polished portfolio, none of it mattered once. Not eligible due to nationality stamped his application to Google. He wept alone in his small apartment, typing one final message to his friend. Maybe leaving home was the only way to be treated like a human. Yet, in that moment of despair, his phone rang. On the line was President Ibrahim Traoré himself. No promises of visas. No vague reassurances about IMF loans. Instead, Traoré asked, "Would you like to build something bigger than Google right here in Burkina Faso?" Ousmane whispered yes, and the quiet revolution began. Over the next weeks, Traoré's office became a beacon. Engineers who'd studied in France, Morocco, Russia, or who'd worked briefly for Huawei or Meta answered the call. They came with nothing but laptops and hope. In an abandoned field on Ouagadougou's outskirts, they cleared brush and laid foundations not for luxury villas, but for Tama technology of African memory and autonomy. Under Africa's blazing sun, they erected 2 sovereign data centers without a single foreign server. Walls rose from locally sourced materials, corn husks, and sawdust packed into insulation panels, powered by solar arrays that trace the sky all day long. No air conditioning, no California cloud, just code and conviction. On June 14, 2025, the government unveiled PAC Digital, a $150 million initiative to transform Burkina Faso's digital landscape. In a ceremony radiating both pride and defiance, Traoré cut the ribbon on 2 data centers capable of handling everything from birth certificates to land deeds. By nightfall, technicians lit up fiber optic lines reaching 500 remote villages where children had never seen a smartphone, now connected by fiber to the heart of their nation's network. A live demonstration showed a rural mother registering her newborn's birth certificate on a tablet powered solely by solar energy. There was no lag, no paperwork, no middleman, just instant immutable record-keeping etched onto Burkina Faso's own sovereign blockchain. Behind the scenes, Ousmane and his team worked long into the starlit nights. Each line of code was tested under brutal conditions, surges of heat-intermittent power, and the constant threat of corporate pushback. Yet their unity never wavered. When Google blocked API access from Burkina Faso, they rewrote interfaces. When Microsoft suspended software licenses, they built open-source replacements. And when Amazon severed cloud services without warning, they optimized Tama's architecture so that every byte of data resided securely on national soil. With each setback, their determination hardened, forging a system designed not just for resilience, but for true independence. The emotional core of these early efforts lay in the hands and faces of the engineers themselves. Usman, wiping sweat from his brow, remembered the first time he saw villagers light up as a child logged into AfriNet, Burkina Faso's own social network built alongside Tama. He recalled tears in the eyes of an elder who for the first time could verify land ownership for his family without risking confrontation or corruption. In those moments, the project transcended technology. It became a lifeline, a testament that control over one's data is as fundamental as the right to exist. PAC Digital's launch reverberated beyond Burkina Faso's borders. International headlines buzzed with alarm and admiration. Critics warned of China-style digital control, while admirers crowned Burkina Faso the Black Silicon Valley. But these labels mattered little to the men and women huddled around servers in Ouagadougou. Their code was more than a challenge to Western hegemony, it was a declaration of self-determination. As Traoré declared at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, "We do not negotiate over the memory of our people." In that one sentence lay the spirit of a nation that refused to accept no as an answer. This, then, is the story of the first phase from a broken visa application to the birth of Tama and PAC Digital. It is the tale of a country that chose action over apology, of engineers who turned rejection into innovation, and of a president who believed that technology, when driven by conviction and community, could redefine freedom. In the sweltering heat of Ouagadougou's outskirts, the true climax of Burkina Faso's digital rebellion unfolded in a dimly lit server room at the Tama Data Center. It began with a routine code audit by Usman's team, an exercise meant to ensure the integrity of their sovereign blockchain. What they uncovered was anything but routine, a silent, insidious piece of malware buried deep within an open-source library designed to siphon encrypted blocks of data back to a foreign server in California. This was not an accidental vulnerability. It was a calculated probe into the heart of their national memory. As the realization sank in, panic threatened to overcome the engineers. Hundreds of thousands of birth certificates, land deeds, medical records, and financial histories hung in the balance. If stolen, these documents could be used to manipulate markets, undermine property rights, or even target vulnerable communities. The room fell silent as Usman issued the order, "Shut down all foreign-facing connections now." In under 3 minutes, the entire data center entered lockdown. Solar arrays and local networks remained live, but every gateway to the outside world was severed. Meanwhile, President Ibrahim Traoré received the alert in his office. Without hesitation or theatrics, he summoned a national address. Standing before a giant screen displaying the malware's code path, he spoke in measured tones. "We once feared losing our gold. Now we see our memory is being hunted. When a thief enters your house, he steals more than possessions. He steals your dreams." His calm conviction turned fear into solidarity. Across the country, televisions and radios relayed his words. In villages connected by AfriNet tablets, elders nodded in grim agreement. The international fallout was immediate. Facebook and Google remained silent. Microsoft issued a terse statement recommending heightened vigilance. The EU's digital commissioner demanded an explanation, citing threats to global cybersecurity norms. U.S. analysts warned that if Burkina Faso's experiment failed, it could destabilize data markets worldwide. A leaked memo from a major Silicon Valley firm labeled Tama a data black hole, suggesting that AI systems reliant on African consumer data might grind to a halt. Yet this external pressure only strengthened the resolve within Burkina Faso. Engineers raced to develop an in-house patch, rewriting critical authentication modules and integrating real-time intrusion detection powered by local satellite feeds from BNOT 1. They tested every update under the brutal midday sun and the chill of desert nights, ensuring that no backdoor could ever be reopened. With each line of fortified code, the system grew more resilient and more emblematic of African self-determination. At the same time, civil society mobilized. Online hashtags like NARS Protect African Data and NAR No Permission, No Problem trended across AfriNet and global social platforms. Grassroots tech groups in Accra, Dakar, and Lagos pledged support, sharing blueprints, security patches, and best practices. A coalition of African diaspora developers in Toronto and Paris contributed code audits pro bono, viewing Tama not just as Burkina Faso's asset, but as a continental shield. In a virtual summit convened by the African Union, 12 nations signed the Non-Colonial Data Pact, committing to host their own sovereign data infrastructures and resist exploitative cross-border data flows. Valerie, a retired schoolteacher in a remote village, logged into AfriNet one morning to see headlines declaring Burkina Faso the Black Silicon Valley. She smiled as her granddaughter navigated the blockchain-backed school enrollment portal with ease. "They said we couldn't," Valerie whispered, "but look how far we've come." Her pride mirrored that of millions who had once questioned whether Africa could ever write its own digital destiny. Even in the United States, the narrative began to shift. Editorials in major newspapers pondered the implications. Was Burkina Faso's defiance a noble stand for sovereignty or a dangerous precedent for digital fragmentation? Policy think tanks hosted panels debating whether global tech should adapt to a multipolar data landscape. Meanwhile, investors quietly inquired about partnering with Sankara Tech Academy, recognizing that today's African engineers hardened by adversity might drive tomorrow's breakthroughs. By the end of this chapter, the climax had evolved into a defining moment. Burkina Faso had not only repelled an attack, but had woven that struggle into the very ethos of Tama. The data center's walls, once mere concrete and solar panels, now stood as symbols of resistance. And for President Traoré and his team, the message was clear. We do not ask for permission. We build our future. In the wake of Burkina Faso's bold digital overhaul, the impact rippled far beyond server racks and code repositories. What began as a technical feat under President Ibrahim Traoré swiftly evolved into a profound reordering of civil life and political power, one that reshaped how citizens engage with their government and how the nation is perceived on the world stage. A new era of administrative transparency. Within months of PAC Digital's launch every day, Burkina discovered that the bureaucracy they once feared had become astonishingly open. Gone were the dusty filing cabinets and interminable queues for birth certificates or land titles. Instead, immutable blockchain records meant that every transaction from school enrollments to tax filings was logged in real time and visible to authorized eyes. In Ouagadougou, a small business owner marveled that her property deed, once a brittle paper document vulnerable to manipulation, existed now as an unalterable digital record. When a low-level official attempted to expedite a permit by demanding a bribe, her transaction audit trail flashed red and the attempt was exposed to internal auditors. This sudden imposition of accountability had an electrifying effect. Local news outlets ran exposés on petty corruption that had previously gone unchecked. Civic groups formed online watchdog committees using AfriNet to crowdsource reports of misfeasance. Within 6 weeks, reported small-scale graft cases dropped by nearly 45% according to a preliminary internal audit. Citizens who once resigned themselves to the cost of grease money now felt empowered to refuse and report misconduct, knowing that their reports would be time-stamped and impossible to cover up. Empowering the marginalized. Perhaps the greatest civil consequence lay in giving voice to those historically sidelined. In remote villages, women gained instant access to maternal health records and vaccination schedules via solar-powered tablets. Literacy programs built into AfriNet allowed elders to read and understand their land rights, reducing disputes that had sparked local conflicts for generations. Children with disabilities previously excluded from school enrollment processes saw their records protected against alteration, ensuring they received support services they had long been denied. In one poignant scene, a grandmother in the Sahel region wept as she registered her orphaned grandchildren for school, something she believed impossible just months earlier. Political shifts and citizen participation. On the political front, the data revolution shifted the balance of power between citizens and the state. With dashboards tracking public service metrics such as clinic wait times, school enrollment rates, and infrastructure maintenance schedules, journalists and civic activists held regional administrators publicly accountable. Town hall meetings streamed live on AfriNet, where officials answered questions in real time and community members posted follow-up queries in comment threads that no politician could ignore. This surge in participation cut across party lines, forcing elected representatives to engage directly with constituents or risk losing support in the next election. At the national level, opposition leaders seized the momentum to press for broader reforms. The main opposition party introduced legislation to strengthen digital rights protections, drawing support from a coalition of civil society organizations. Even President Traoré's fiercest critics conceded that PAC Digital had exposed systemic failures they could no longer dismiss. In a rare moment of cross-party cooperation, Parliament passed an amendment codifying digital transparency standards into Burkina Faso's constitution, ensuring that future administrations could not easily roll back the reforms. International repercussions abroad. The civil political fallout was equally dramatic. Western governments, long accustomed to providing development assistance under opaque conditions, found themselves negotiating with a Burkina Faso that no longer needed foreign-controlled systems. Donor agencies faced with a government that insisted on complete data sovereignty were compelled to offer aid in the form of technology grants and capacity building rather than server hosting. This marked a historic shift in aid paradigms as international partners adapted to meet Burkina Faso's insistence on autonomy rather than dependency. Concurrently emboldened by Burkina Faso's example, a wave of digital sovereignty initiatives sprang up across Africa. Neighboring countries reached out to share Tama's open-source code, creating a regional network of interconnected data centers that respected each nation's privacy laws. The African Union, inspired by the success, drafted a model policy for member states to adopt similar digital governance frameworks. In Washington, think tanks began publishing white papers on how Ibrahim Traoré's experiment might inform global norms, while U.S. legislators eyed potential collaborations that respected Burkina Faso's no-permission stance. Emotional resonance and lasting change. For ordinary Burkinabé, the reforms provoked a profound emotional shift from skepticism to pride. In community gatherings, voices once resigned to fate now brimmed with optimism. "We used to feel voiceless," one farmer told a local reporter, "but today, my data speaks for me." Across urban and rural divides, citizens found common cause in a shared digital identity that affirmed their rights and their agency. As the political dust settled, Burkina Faso stood transformed. What had begun as a technical project had become a catalyst for civic empowerment, a blueprint for transparent governance, and a beacon inspiring nations worldwide. The civil and political consequences of Tala and PAC Digital, greater accountability, richer participation, and a reconfiguration of aid relationships demonstrate that when technology is placed in the hands of the people, it can truly rewrite the social contract. In the United States, Burkina Faso's Tama experiment has prompted a mix of admiration, anxiety, and strategic recalibration. Tech executives in Silicon Valley, accustomed to tapping into global data pools, now confront the prospect of a multipolar ecosystem. In policy circles from Washington, think tanks to Capitol Hill briefings, analysts debate whether an African sovereign cloud threatens the hegemony of American platforms or represents a necessary evolution toward data diversity. Admiration and opportunity. Some U.S. investors quietly applaud the resilience and ingenuity demonstrated by Traoré's team. Venture capitalists see potential in partnering with Sankaratech Academy or licensing Tama's open-source blockchain for niche applications such as healthcare networks in underserved American rural communities. Humanitarian organizations are exploring collaborations to extend AfriNet-style connectivity to Native American reservations and remote Alaska villages, learning from Burkina Faso's solar-powered model to bridge the digital divide at home. Geopolitical concerns, yet government strategists raise cautionary flags. A report from a leading cybersecurity firm warns that fragmented data jurisdictions could complicate international crime investigations and cross-border cooperation. Members of Congress have called hearings to assess how data sovereignty pacts might affect U.S. intelligence gathering and trade agreements. Meanwhile, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office reviews tariff schedules for cloud computing services, mindful that Burkina Faso's WTO challenge could set precedents for other nations to restrict American-hosted data. Shifting aid paradigms, development agencies are recalibrating their approach. Rather than offering server infrastructure, USAID is now funding capacity-building programs, training Burkina engineers in advanced cybersecurity and AI ethics. This reversal underscores a growing recognition true partnership demands respect for national autonomy. It's a subtle but profound shift American aid that empowers local control rather than perpetuating dependency. Global ripple effects. Beyond the US, European capitals are quietly rethinking digital cooperation. France, once eager to host former colonies' data, now negotiates pacts emphasizing joint governance and encryption standards. In Asia, India and Japan examine how Tama's model could inform their own regional data collaborations. Even global standard-setting bodies like the ITU are revisiting guidelines on cross-border data flows in light of Burkina Faso's non-colonial data pact. As the world watches, Burkina Faso has become both a case study and a catalyst. The question is no longer whether African nations can build their own digital futures, but how established powers will adapt. Will U.S. policymakers view data sovereignty as a challenge to be contained or as an invitation to forge new, more equitable partnerships? In the quiet corridors of the Tama Data Center, code became more than ones and zeros. It became a shield for a nation's most precious asset, its people's memories. Yet this rebellion carries a warning for the rest of the world. When data is treated as a mere resource to be harvested, the balance of power shifts away from citizens and toward unseen forces behind the screens. Burkina Faso's stand reminds us that without vigilance, any nation, even the mightiest, can fall under the sway of digital colonialism. But the story doesn't end here. As Tama's blockchain weaves into every aspect of daily life, from planting seasons guided by satellite data to clean energy electric vehicles traversing Sahel roads, the dream of a truly self-reliant Africa unfolds. This is not just Burkina Faso's journey. It is a blueprint for communities everywhere seeking to guard their privacy, protect their history, and build a future on their own terms. So ask yourself, what does it mean when a country refuses to beg for permission and instead designs its own destiny? Can established powers embrace a new era of shared sovereignty, or will old habits of control spark fresh conflicts in the digital age? And for you, the viewer, can we continue to trust President Ibrahim Traoré, or should we support someone else to succeed him? If you believe that innovation belongs to every person, if you feel a surge of pride watching black minds code their own future, then be part of the movement. Share this story so others learn how lines of code in a dusty Ouagadougou compound challenged the world's tech giants. Comment below with your thoughts on data freedom and what Ibrahim Traoré's vision means for Burkina Faso and beyond. And subscribe if you stand with those rewriting Africa news, forging a path where every voice and every byte truly belongs to its people.